Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I wanted to talk to you about understanding the narcissist mask and the fantasy and how this all works with the false self. So let's jump in. The narcissist, out of their trauma, they built a fantasy. And the fantasy is this fake world where they have supremacy, power, and control over whoever believes that false mask. But to get that false mask powered up, they need empathic power. That's why they always come to empath, or if they can find an empath in-house garbage bin, that's what they will do. So they can use and abuse them and siphon off them on a daily basis so they could power up the mask and be able to go out and seduce and destroy others and take down others and get other forms of supply, other sources of supply. And until that empath decides that the trauma and the betrayal is too much and it sparks their awakening, they're going to stay with the narcissist. And they're going to basically sacrifice themselves to the narcissist, and they have to go into the fantasy with the narcissist, which is to believe the false self, which is what the narcissist is telling you with words, what they're telling you and portraying to you. Now, when you go against those words, because you see the actions that are not coinciding with the words they're telling you, then you're going against the false mask. You're not going against the narcissist, but the narcissist is loyal only to the mask, and the mask is the fantasy. So you can only be with the narcissist if you sacrifice yourself to believing the false mask, which is whatever they tell you, how glorious they are, how pure they are, and how honest and amazing they are. So you always have to prop up and support the false mask. And what they do is they are doing all this negative stuff. For them to get some sort of balance, they need empathic energy to feed the mask that they have, that the narcissist has sacrificed themselves to, and then to project all their negative energy onto you so that you can get forgiveness for their sins because they have an inability to repent. And the same thing goes for the golden child. They build a fantasy because they were pampered and coddled, and their parents gave them cake and cookies every day and did everything for them. So they form an entitlement. And this series of entitlement gets them to build a fantasy from what their parents told them and taught them to get them to build this false mask that incorporates all of that, because that's the only way they know how to function. So both of those are detached from their emotional state and their heartfelt state and their innate self, their spirit man. So they have their mind, will, and emotions, but it's being corrupted by the mask. The mask is wired right to the mind, will, and the emotions and corrupts them. So it gives them skewed thinking. And this is the fantasy. The mask is the fantasy, and it's only powered up through empathic energy. So they have to seduce people, get people to believe their words and not their actions. And then they abuse, use, manipulate, and siphon off while they project onto that empath, and the empath has to get forgiveness for their sins because they sacrificed themselves to the false mask. So basically, the narcissist is living a crappy life, and they know it, but because they have sacrificed themselves to the false mask, the ego is built all on this fantasy that they're perfect. And the empath is the one that's trying to love them to death, but in their loving them to death, they're going into the fantasy with them to believe all of what they're being told and not looking at the actions. But eventually what happens is, if they're an empath that has courage, then when they do see there's a difference from the actions don't meet the words, meaning it's a lie, they start to combat the narcissist, and the narcissist rejects them, but only because the narcissist and the mask are connected, and the mask is the true handler of the narcissist. And that's the entity. The entity is the handler, the puppeteer to the narcissist. Because they're connected, because the narcissist sacrificed themselves, and they're separated from their innate spirit man, their true self. They don't know who they are without empathic energy. And with the empathic energy, when you're sacrificing yourself, basically they're siphoning your true self off of you to become them, to energize their false mask. So you're empty and you are a hollow shell of oneself because you don't know who you are, because it's being siphoned off to the mask. The narcissist doesn't know who they are because they are connected to the mask, and they have disconnected from their true self through sacrificing themselves as well. So yours could be temporary if you decide to disconnect and to change your ways. But there's a lot of empaths that are toxic enablers where they don't have courage. So they continually either go back forever, or they will, and if they break up with one narcissist, they'll find another narcissist to be a toxic enabler too. So they continue to lose themselves. But then there's the empaths that wake up. Those are the chosen sources, the ones that are chosen to break the generational curse. But also, I do believe that there are some narcissists, maybe. I think that there's a possibility. But what they have to do is they have to realize, have an awakening, that the mask is controlling them and that their whole life is a lie. And they have to cut that off. So they have to forgive, is to unlock themselves to get reconnected to their innate self, because they have to put to death the false mask. And the same thing with the golden child narcissist. They're all disconnected. Well, the avoidant just refuses to deal with the forgiveness. But to get realigned is to get correct, to get God's wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And the word is what cuts that like a double-edged sword and goes down to the bone and the marrow and the joints to the heart and the soul and straightens it out. So for the narcissist to get reconnected, it starts with forgiveness. For the empath and the avoidant and for the golden child to get realigned is also forgiveness. So all have to forgive for the trauma, the betrayal, the lies, and all the stuff that's happened to them, even if they're innocent. Because if it happened in early childhood, it was innocent. But this shows we have to walk like Christ walked, and Christ forgave everybody as completely pure as God's son. So we have no argument. We have to operate like he did. And a lot of people don't want to do that. And they'll let arrogance build or build false masks and fantasies to draw people into, or in the empath situation, they will feed the fantasy. So their part would be to feed it and to fuel it up. So the empath is innocent until they awaken. But if the empath awakens and they still stick around to do that, then they become a Judas. They become a Judas, and it's a Judas to yourself. You're betraying yourself. And the narcissist betrays themselves and betrays others, because the narcissist refuses to forgive. Now, if you can get the ability to forgive, the problem is it takes, in my opinion, it takes some sort of love to forgive. And with the avoidant and with the empath, I mean that can be done. But with the narcissist and the golden child narcissist, they seem to have disconnected to where, unless you can somehow give true forgiveness, and then you would have to start operating in a pathway to change, which would be to everything that you've done wrong, to start walking in the operation of righteousness, true righteousness, which is to be vulnerable. You would have to start by telling the truth, period. And what the narcissist does is they hide all truth, and they come up with false narratives, false lies, lie by admission, and half-truths, and all of that. And they know it's wrong, but to be free is, the truth will set you free. Thank you for watching. Till next time, Soldier, peace, I'm out.